In today's video, we're going to see what happens if we let silly putty sit for a week in several different chemicals. We've done some fun stuff with silly putty in the past, and in fact we still have a lot of it, but we got some new silly putty for today because I wanted the individual colors, and it's a pretty simple experiment we're going to be doing. We've got 5 colors of silly putty, and we're going to take water and 4 other chemicals and soak the silly putty in it for a week and see what it does to it. Here's the basic idea. We've got 5 different colors of silly putty, and we're going to test what happens to them if we let them sit in a jar full of a strange chemical for a full week. Will they melt, decompose, or nothing? This is a silicone-based polymer of some kind that I think will resist some of these, but we want to see what happens. So we've got 91% isopropyl alcohol, acetone, muriatic acid, and unleaded gasoline. I've got like 3 eggs worth for each one, and I'm gonna take one of each color and just flatten it out about as much as I can that will still fit in the jar. And then the other 2 I'm just going to smush together in a ball. I want to see if there's a difference between the flattened version with all the surface area and the slightly more spherical version that's much more condensed. Now they're just going to be sitting in a jar for a week. I expect the rounder blob will kind of melt into the thinner blob a little bit, but I think we'll still have some thicker parts and some thinner parts as a comparison. All right, water. We're gonna go with the classic silly putty. This has been sitting here for like 5 minutes maybe. We're just taking a couple pictures and talking about the setup, and we've noticed that our acetone has actually already started to bleed some color out. There's like a yellow, it looks like highlighter ink, just kind of hovering on the surface of this.
And I am actually fascinated by this, the gasoline is starting to look fuzzy.
Yeah.
It's kind of coming apart a little bit.
Yeah, all right, well I think we should carefully set these in a different room.
Very
try not to stir anything up because we don't want to mess with the results, but then we'll put a time-lapse camera on, and the idea is we'll do it after a week. We might have to check in after a little less to see what's happened to things. Our silly putty has been sitting for a week. 6 different silly putties and 6 different chemicals, and we can already see that some changes have happened. Maybe not as many as I thought would happen though.
I'm pretty impressed with some of these. Like the isopropyl alcohol, I wasn't actually expecting much to happen.
Yeah, it's completely broken down looking.
It
Look at
looks
that.
like chalk.
The gasoline, which was our glow in the dark, I believe, is
melted.
It's kind of just one flat layer at the bottom.
Huh? Acetone also sort of looks like fallen apart chalk.
The Coke, the surface of it is a little pitted, you can see.
Yeah.
It took for a long time it was just floating at the top, and it did eventually sink down somewhat, but not as much as I would have thought. Muriatic acid, this had our silver in it.
Shocked that nothing happened.
Surprisingly unchanged. Yeah, it doesn't seem to react much. And then our water, there's like some pitting on the surface of it, which is interesting, but not a lot changed. So I think it's time to open these and see what we can see from the inside.
I like it.
It's stuck to the bottom of the jar a little bit, but not too much.
Like silly putty do.
Like silly putty do. Taking it out of the water, that really seems very close to the original color, but it has some surface cracking that's pretty interesting.
As soon as you started pulling it, it was fine until then. It looks like old gum you left out in the sun.
Indeed. Yeah, the very surface of it, look at that, it just came right off onto my glove.
Silly putty doesn't normally do that.
I would have thought nothing would happen. I thought it was just gonna sit there and then be wet, and then we would dry off and go back to 100% normal, but
nope, that's like old gum.
Of degradation just from water.
Wow.
So I'm curious if that has done the same thing.
Yeah.
Will it rub off if I smear it? Oh, it does indeed.
Sure enough. And a little bit more, it seems like.
Could be. Let's see, are we gonna get the same cracking? Yeah, the
but
same
that pitted
surface.
texture is even more so now.
Yeah, it's like the water, but just a little more.
Muriatic acid.
All right, and I do have this bowl of baking soda water.
We'll neutralize it.
To neutralize. Still floating quite nicely. Interestingly, this silly putty is floating in our baking soda water too, so I wonder if this color of silly putty
just floats.
Is less dense for some reason.
Oh, color difference on different sides. Side that was face down looks burned almost.
Oh, as I'm like squishing it, some is coming out and it's continuing to react. So there's like a little bit of acid in the surface of the silly putty.
Wow.
And that's reacting to the baking soda.
Okay, so it is paler. You're actually scraping off the pale white.
Yeah,
You see that?
Yeah, and then inside. Honestly, this seems much less destroyed than the water and the Coke though.
It does.
So the acid really does not react much to silly putty.
Isopropyl alcohol.
So I can try and get this one out, but I don't think it's gonna come out in one piece. Remember how you described it as looking like it was chalk?
Uh-huh.
I don't think you're far off.
Interesting.
Like wet chalk. See what you can scoop out with a spoon.
Wow.
It's like gooey chalk, if that were a thing. That is a strange paste.
Uh-huh.
Thin paste.
But it's almost an elastic paste.
There you go, it's burning.
This spoon is on fire.
Oh, weird. So I let it just dry on my glove, and now it's like sticky to itself.
It just smells like burnt plastic. It's basically what we've done here. But yeah, it turned white. It's just ash.
It's kind of back to silly putty.
Wow.
Stretches, sticks together. It feels like a little thinner consistency,
Okay.
but it does feel like pretty similar to silly putty.
Hard pass for me, but that's neat.
Okay, I've got some just out on the table, and I'm gonna let that dry off as well, and then I'll
Yeah.
try and gather up a little bit more of it. This was our neon pink color, and the neon, the fluorescein that was in this, really got leached out, and so the whole thing glows very nicely under a black light.
Now it all smells like acetone.
Oh, even more powdery, I think.
Yeah.
Gonna go straight to that spoon method.
That's like Jell-O. Now it's not. Gross.
With the alcohol, it was more runny. It really kind of turned into a liquid. This, while it is paste-like, it's like a drier paste. It really just seems like I have wet powder and not a rubbery liquid.
Very excitable about that.
Acetone burns nicely. So this has started to dry off, and I think we are getting a similar, like it's sticking to itself, forming these sort of sheets. I don't know that it's actually bonding back together as well. It's staying maybe a little more crumbly.
It smells less plasticky when this one burns, interestingly enough.
The yellow stuff in the alcohol was kind of like silly putty, but a lot more liquid. This is kind of like if silly putty could dry out. It's harder and less rubbery, like it doesn't stretch quite as well. You can see it just stretched and then broke. We were saying one of them was like chewed gum. This is like chewed gum that's been sitting out on a sidewalk for a
That's
day.
actually, you're getting the exact same consistency. I thought it was because I burned it, but this is the piece that just burned. Same
Kind
idea.
of the same thing. Well,
Yeah.
yours just broke, so I think yours is a little bit more, fragile, less ductile, but mine is, way less rubbery than the original stuff. All right, last one up, we have the gasoline, which I believe this was our glow in the dark. So if I hit this with a black light, it should charge up at least a little bit.
A little.
Doesn't hold it for long. We've got studio lights, but originally you could see a little bit. I think it's lost some of that.
I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now, I don't want to do a burn test on this one.
It didn't just like start breaking apart, it just melted, and
Straight down.
we time-lapsed, and it was taking a photo about every 30 minutes, but it did not take long for that gasoline one to go. It just kind of
Wow.
melted away. And then like after it's melted away, you can start to see the alcohol is breaking down, the acetone one is breaking down. So it wasn't terribly visual what happened on the time-lapse, but it shows how quickly some things happened.
Wow. It's like powdery syrup.
Oh, yep, not even a syrup. That's just like, I don't really know what to call that. If you watered down baby food, oh man, look at that, it just swirls. That's how much it's dissolved down. I guess we can set this one outside with the others and let it dry off.
Sure.
Gasoline should evaporate fairly quickly. See what's left after doing that.
All right.
They're mostly dry, somewhat.
They're
like
yeah.
gooey dry.
They're weirdly.
We don't know what they're supposed to
Actually,
look like, so because we've
hang
never done this
on.
before. Is that silly putty like?
Except for the fact that the color's stuck to
Some
me.
dissolves off. We've also got the little spot I put here on the counter.
Yeah,
And,
it's more silly putty-like.
It peels pretty nicely. I mean, this is not exact, but pretty similar. Like,
It's rubbery, yes, but it also breaks, and it's not adhering to itself anymore. It's folded rather than gooing back together.
yeah, as I mixed mine, it got a little better, but it does still sometimes just break more easily than new silly putty. I'm gonna try and get all of it just to,
I want to look at the acetone stuff.
Yeah.
It's just crunchy.
kind of an extreme effect of what we were seeing before. It's
Yeah.
more brittle. All right, and so this has now been mixed together, and it's silly putty-like, but something was taken out by the alcohol. More of it was taken out by the acetone, I think, but
Yep.
so yeah, there's some stretch to it, some squish. Yeah, it's just like a plastic powder stuff.
Yep.
No rubberiness to it at all.
Guys, if you have silly putty, maybe don't put it in
Anything?
yeah,
Keep it in a nice
water.
plastic egg full of air. Seems to work great.
Guys, we've done a lot of videos with silly putty, but if there's anything else you want to see, let us know in the comments below. Guys, that's not all. You know we've always got more for you to see. Hit that box down there to subscribe so you never miss out on the fun. We'll see you in the next one. Talk to you then.